You bought the peaches ripe because they were cheaper that way, a whole bushel of them, gold and blushing, and you set them on the counter, meaning to get to them Saturday. Then Saturday filled up the way Saturdays do. By Tuesday, the bottom layer had gone soft, and when you lifted one, it wept juice into your palm, and the skin slid loose like a stocking. The smell reached you before your hand did, that sweet, sour breath of fruit turning to wine and then to rot. Fruit flies lifted in a little cloud when you leaned close. You told yourself you would save the good ones, and you did save a few, but 3/4 of that bushel went out to the hens or into the bin. You paid near $30 at the stand for those peaches. You stood there with a wet rag and counted it. The money and the summer both poured out over your own 2 hands. And here is the part that will sting a little, so I will say it gently. The better ending was 1 boiling kettle of water away. Not a machine, not a special skill handed down, just a pot of water climbing to a rolling boil, and a little patience beside it. Those peaches could have been slipped from their skins in that hot water, packed into jars, and set to seal while you did the supper dishes. And the jars themselves, the very jars that would have held that whole bushel through a year of winters, were most likely already sitting on a shelf in your own house, empty, waiting, gathering dust. A pantry full of golden halves and glass, opened in February when the world outside is gray. That was right there. It was always right there. The distance between the rot in your bin and the row of full jars was smaller than a single afternoon. So let me set one thing down plain before we go a step further. That waste was not carelessness in you. It was not laziness. And it was surely not that you love your family or your money any less than the woman who cans 100 jars a fall. It was that nobody ever stood at your elbow and showed you the plain order of it. Nobody put the pot in front of you and said, this first, then this, and now you rest, and the jars do the keeping. The knowing used to pass from a mother's hands to a daughter's hands across the same kitchen, hour after hour, season after season, until it lived in the fingers without a thought. When that chain breaks, and for most families it has broken, the fruit still comes ripe and cheap and beautiful, but the hands that would have caught it never learned the catch. That's not a failing of yours. You cannot be blamed for a thing you were never taught. I saw the whole of it again just the other week, standing sharp as anything. There's a young woman down our road, newly married, a good big garden. She and her husband put in that first spring, more than they rightly knew what to do with. I came past her gate on foot, and she was standing there beside a little wagon heaped high with winter squash, the hard blue kind and the long tan necks, more squash than 2 people could eat before Christmas if they ate it every night. She had her arms folded, and this look on her face I knew right away, half proud of the harvest and half sick over it, because she did not have the first idea how to keep any of it past October. She asked me, almost shy, whether it was true you could just leave them in the cellar. She had grown every one of those squash with her own back and her own water and her own weeding, and she was one hard frost away from watching the pile of them soften and cave in on that wagon, the same weeping ruin, the same wasted money, the same summer poured out. And I thought, standing at that gate, how many of you are holding a wagon just like hers right now? doing everything right at the growing end and the buying end, then losing the harvest at the very last step for one person willing to stand beside you and say, "Here, this is how we keep it." Nobody stood beside her. Not yet. Nobody has stood beside you. That waste was never your fault because nobody ever stood beside you and showed you the plain way. So let me stand beside you now. That waste was never your fault because nobody ever stood beside you and showed you the plain way. So let me stand beside you now. My name is Sadie, and I have stood at the butchering table every November since I was 9 years old, back when I could barely reach the salt crock. I am not the one who does the killing, and I am no butcher. That is the men's work in the cold barn. What I own is the seasoning bowl, the lard kettle steaming on the cook stove, and the long shelves of canning that carry us clear through to spring. I have put up a garden with these two hands for more than 40 years, and I want to be honest with you before we take one step further. The title of this here talk says I cut my grocery bill in half. I will tell you plain that this is my hook to bring you to the table, and not a figure I have measured out with a scale. Nobody has proven a number like that, and I will not pretend to. Here is the truth that matters more. None of these habits save you a single penny if your food comes off the retail shelf. You must grow it in your own garden or buy it at harvest price from a farm when the crates are cheap and heavy. Canning a tomato you paid store price for costs you more than the can on the aisle. Keep that close and let us begin the counting. Habit 1 is water bath canning your summer fruit and your tomatoes. Only your high acid foods go in a plain boiling bath at 212 degrees. Your fruit, your pickles, your tomatoes with a little acid added. That roll-in boil kills what would spoil them. Jam holds its best color and flavor for about a year on the shelf. The tell you wait for comes after the jars cool on the towel. You will hear a bright little ping across the kitchen, and when you press the center of the lid with your fingertip, it holds firm and does not spring back. That drawn down lid is your promise the seal took hold. Now let me set beside that the plainest thrift I know, which is habit 6, reusing your mason jars and rings year after year. The glass never wears out. You wash it, you check the rim by feel for any chip, and you use it again for 20 seasons. Only the flat lid is new each time. Pair that with habit 30, jam and jelly cooked from windfall fruit, the drops that fall bruised under the tree and cost you nothing. Home jam made this way runs near 30% of the store price, which is a saving of about 70 cents on the dollar. A jar of your own produce can come in under 25 cents, where the bought jar asks $2 and more. Now let me show you 2 habits from the tail end of the garden, when the vines are spent and the air turns sharp. Habit 4 is apple butter. You cook your windfall apples down slow in a copper kettle, stirring with a long wooden paddle so it never scorches on the bottom. You know it is ready when the paddle stands a moment in the middle and the butter mounds dark and thick and the whole yard smells of cinnamon and cider. Habit 5 is chow chow. That sweet and sour relish made from every last bean, pepper, and bit of cabbage the garden gives up before frost. You feel it thicken and hear the jars ping the same as the fruit. Nothing in that garden going to waste. Now let me remind you why the numbers only work one way. every one of these habits leans on the same post that the food began in your soil or came cheap from a neighbor's field at picking time. The lid pulls down the same, the ping sounds the same, but the saving is only real when you did not pay retail to fill the jar. That is the honest hinge the whole pantry swings upon, and I will not hide it from you. Those first habits are only the doorway, and the real savings wait deeper in the cellar and the smokehouse. Those first habits are only the doorway, and the real savings wait deeper in the cellar and the smokehouse. Habit 7 is the root cellar itself, cool and dark, and holding near 32 to 40 degrees, where potatoes and carrots and cabbage keep for months without a thing running. But the cellar shelves I am proudest of are the jars, and here I must tell you the truth plainly. Habits 2 and 3 are pressure canning, and this is where I will not let tradition make me foolish. Fruit and tomatoes with a little added acid go into a boiling water bath, because that heat handles what grows in sour foods. But green beans, sweet corn, my home-raised meat and broth, those are low acid, and a boiling bath will not save them. The spores that cause botulism live right through boiling water. Only a pressure canner reaches the 240 to 250 degrees that kills them. So I never bath can a vegetable, I never open kettle can, and I never oven can, no matter how my grandmother did it. Traditional and safe are not always the same word, and I would rather you trust the gauge than the memory. Now let me take you to the crock, because habits 14 and 15 cost almost nothing and pay you back all winter. Sauerkraut and salt brine, dill pickles need no vinegar and no heat, only salt at about 2% of the vegetable's weight. I weigh my cabbage and I weigh my salt, because guessing is how a batch goes soft and slippery. Set the crock at a cool room temperature and let it work 1 to 4 weeks. The whole secret is keeping the vegetables under the brine with a weighted stone or a plate so nothing pokes up into the air. A white film on top is only calm yeast, and you skim it and go on. But if you ever see fuzzy mold or a pink or orange color, or you smell something foul instead of clean and sour, you discard the whole crock. You do not taste it to check. Your nose and your eyes tell you when it is right, sharp and tangy, and still crisp. Now let me carry you out to the smokehouse where habits 18 and 19 turn a hog into a year of eating. Habit 18 is rendering lard. I cut the fat small and melt it slow in the kettle. 1 to 3 hours until the cracklings sink and the fat runs clear as weak tea. Then I strain it free of every bit of water and meat solid, because that is what makes it keep. Poorly strained lard can turn in a month or 2, but rendered right and kept cool and dark it holds near a year. Habit 19 is bacon and ham, and hear me well. It is the salt cure, measured and given its full time, that makes cured meat safe, not the smoke, and not how the family always did it. Smoke adds flavor and a dry skin, but cold smoke over meat that never got a proper cure is a real danger. So I follow a tested cure ratio first, and only then do the racks go up over a slow smoke. Habit 17 is the whole hog day, and that is a frolic, a whole community turning out on a sharp autumn morning. The men take the kill and the heavy work, for that is theirs, and I take what is mine. The sausage seasoning, the crocks, the smoker racks, The lard kettle. One good hog gives us hams and bacon, roasts and sausage, lard for the whole year of baking, and scrapple besides. Set against a year of buying all that meat and fat at the store, one hog raised on your own place is the single biggest cut to a grocery bill that I know. Now let me finish at the churn. Habit 21 is hand churning butter, and you know it by feel. When the cream that is slapped and slapped suddenly breaks and the butter grains gather while the buttermilk thins away. Habit 16 is clabbering, letting raw milk sour and thicken on its own in a day or two into something cultured and tangy. I will be honest that a springhouse runs cooler than a modern box, but not so cold. So clabber and butter, kept this way, do not keep as long, and you make only what you will use. By now your shelves are filling, and there are just a few habits left to seal the year shut. By now your shelves are filling, and there are just a few habits left to seal the year shut. Let me land them the way we count them out, brisk and plain, so you carry them into the fall without fuss. Habit 20 is dried jerky from venison or beef. You heat the meat to 160 degrees first to make it safe, then dry it low at 130 to 140. It keeps only a month or two, so I make small batches and eat them promptly. Do not let anyone tell you jerky lasts the winter, for it does not. Habit 22 is farmer's cheese, gathered from milk that is soured and clabbered. You warm it gentle, cut the curd, and drain it in a cloth. A little salt, and there is your soft cheese for the table. Now let me set out the baking. Habit 23 is baking day. A whole week of bread, pie crusts and rolls turned out of the cook stove in one hot session from bulk flour, one firing of the oven, one afternoon of work, and the bread box is full. Habit 24 is dehydrating. Apple slices strung to dry, herbs bundled in the airy loft, and sweet corn spread thin. Dried fruit holds near a year if you keep it cool and dark. Now the frugal habits, the ones that stretch every dollar. Habit 25 is buying flour, sugar, and oats in bulk from the Amish and Mennonite bulk stores, for the big bag always costs less by the pound. Habit 26 is canning produce in volume at harvest from the local farms, not at retail. Hear me plain, for this is the whole secret of the half bill. You save when the tomatoes are cheap and plenty, and you grew or bought them by the bushel. Canning store produce at full price saves you nothing. Habit 27 is scratch cooking, so you pay for the ingredient and never the package. Habit 28 is waste not. The roast that becomes hash, the bones that become broth, the heel of bread that becomes pudding. And habit 29 is sizing your garden to what your family truly eats and can store, so nothing rots in the row for want of a jar. So tell me down in the comments, which of these 30 habits are you starting with this fall? The jar or the crock? And how many mouths are you feeding at your table? I read everyone, and I will answer what I can. Next time, I will walk you through the whole of it, packing a root cellar for winter, every bin and shelf laid out, so nothing sprouts or softens on you before spring. That is your natural next step, and I would not have you miss it. A plain life and a full pantry are not bought in a day. They are built one shelf at a time, one habit set beside the last. A plain life and a full pantry begin with the first jar you put up. So go and fill one shelf before the frost comes down.